Ready? Okay. I really want to thank Sara and Olle for inviting me to be here. It's not often I get to juggle in an art gallery, and okay, I have a question really fast, and then I'll nail this.
Yeah.
Like, do I keep like staring, or should I like do this? Like, should I in an art gallery and then come back? Maybe like I should be like I do in the show with the audience.
This expression, the colors are the life and suffering of the light, is not a bad one.
We've been dreaming about a space for quite a long time, actually, and that we wanted to call it the Fantastic Place.
That was the name we used 10 years ago.
Yeah.
For like an imaginary place.
Well, I've been working on this show for, I think, I've been saying 13 years, but I think it's 15 years, actually, when the idea first came. And the very first idea was, Wes Peden said, hey, what if you had some rings that were in different shades of the same color? And it was kind of, I don't think it was just like a offhand throwaway comment, but it wasn't a big deal. It was like, oh, that'd be a funny idea. But that really stuck in my head. And I started to think about it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because one thing that it occurred to me, this idea of having different shades of the same color allowed something in juggling that was never possible before. Because normally you would use, let's say juggling ring, let's say you're going to juggle 5 rings, you use the same color for all 5 rings. Then you do some juggling pattern, and maybe some go high, some go low, whatever. The audience who doesn't know juggling are just like, oh, there's a bunch of rings in the air. Oh, there's one that fell on the ground. That was a mistake, whatever, right? But what you could do is you could start to maybe change. You could use 4 red rings and a blue ring. And then the audience could follow that blue ring maybe and go, oh, it's going back and forth or whatever. You could uncover different layers of information of the patterns. But you were really stuck with then 4 red and 1 blue, and you couldn't really get a sense of the whole thing. You could just pick out the different parts if you don't know juggling. But I thought if you had those different shades of red, for example, you could kind of zoom out with your eyes and see the entire shape of just red. But if you cared enough, you could get into the detail of where's the darker red going and where's the lighter red one going. And I don't know, there was something about this idea of shifting focus of the, the macro and the micro or something that really appealed to me about this shades of color. And that was where it all started, and that's been 15 years ago.
As I remember, I started asking, why is there no relation between juggling and colors? And I think when I started asking and pestering jugglers like Gilligan about that, maybe something came out of those conversations. I think it's a revolutionary thing that colors, not only in scenography and dresses, but also with the objects themselves is coming, will kind of mean a lot for juggling, if jugglers take it seriously.
It's so hard to talk about because there's nothing concrete I can say about why the colors are so good or so affecting people that they would cry. Whereas, for example, in this TED Talk I talk about on YouTube, the different sizes of rings. And there's like the small ring and the big ring, and when you put them together and you throw them, the big ring goes higher and the small ring goes lower. And there's a technical thing I can concretely talk to you about and say the ring goes higher and therefore I can juggle like this in this pattern or whatever. But when the blue ring, I can't point to anything to you and say, well, when I juggle with the blue ring, this happens. Like I can't express that in words. So it's such a different sort of thing to talk about. But I am convinced there is some sort of truth there. And I think that's really what the show I'm doing kind of confronts. It's like the first step into confronting what could that be? Like what could it mean if you juggle with different color things?
when I came to the show, one has to imagine then the whole thing that was on stage with all the different colored rings, with this wave of different colored balls, and with these black clubs in the end of the room. And it was obvious that all this cannot happen now. All this cannot happen now. So I saw hundreds and thousands of options for 1 hour of juggling. And hundreds and thousands of options of 1 hour juggling with only these objects. And then you can imagine that there are lots of objects that were not on stage, objects that we might find out which they are by using these objects in their colors. They might tell us the next family of juggling objects, which they are. So yes, of course, the equipment that now exists in your atelier gives the options for hundreds of shows of colored object juggling.
Thanks, man. Favorite color?
I don't have a favorite color, but I would just take a color.
And it would be your favorite one?
This for today.
Yeah, great. Feel free to have a seat. Thanks, great. Thanks. And so I forgot to say, or didn't think that I should say, that this is a new piece. And so tonight's the 4th time I perform it. And that's not in any way to apologize to say that it might be bad because it's new, but because it's kind of exciting that it's new. That's why I mentioned that. So this is not the, oh yeah, we're gonna go see Jay do his normal show, you know, Circus Mania, another show. But it's like a new piece. And besides thanking Olle for being here, I want to thank Sara and Olle for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, so here's Sara de Vylder.
Okay, Olle Strandberg.
I think it's that we find ourselves a little bit in the fringes or like between genres or in a confusing space, an unknown space maybe. And we tend to collaborate with people that are also somehow attracted to something beyond what they know somehow. And therefore I think what happens that people we collaborate with and our friends that we share artistic values with or whatever, they see this as a space where they all of a sudden fit. And so we invited, for instance, you, because I think that your work with juggling is very unique, specific to I mean, it's something that just you do, I think, and that you have been searching for like context or what other audiences or who should watch my work, why should they watch my work, and a lot of these questions. And you don't just you don't just align your work to fit a market. You actually try to create a market for your work, or maybe you don't even think about market. And I think that's a common thread.
Nobody's safe, which is what the exhibiting people who come here enjoy. Like they want to be a part of something else. So.
And it's so great to be able to juggle in an art gallery. I don't get to do that very often. And I also just really love everything they've been doing with the space here, with all the exhibitions and all the events. So Thank you so much, and it's so nice to be here, and thank you for joining me. Does everybody have a color? Can you hold up your card to see if anybody else needs one? I think you all got one. And we can take a second to look around and you can see all the colors that everyone picked and all the colors that are here. Good. When you look at a card, each color reflects a unique wavelength of light. All the other colors are absorbed except for one frequency that you chose as your favorite color. And so that frequency bounces back to your eye, and that's the color that you see. And that's the first step in understanding what color could be. But those wavelengths that we see, they're only one part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And color is within the visible light range, but beyond that there's infrared and ultraviolet. And out past ultraviolet light there's X-rays and gamma rays, and on the other end, in between infrared and radiation, there's microwaves. But we have to go back to the beginning, and I don't mean the beginning with the wavelength of light, but rather back to the beginning of everything, all the way back to the Big Bang. And when the Big Bang created the universe, it also created the cosmic microwave background, or CMB. And that's leftover microwave radiation from the Big Bang that started to spread through space. In fact, it's still there right now, expanding out until the end of time. And we don't normally think about these infinite microwaves when we turn on a light in our home, for example. But it's all just the same thing, different frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum. If you look out into space far enough, and you see the edge of where the CMB is spreading, it allows you to go back in time, and you can see the start of the universe, back when it was an infinitely dense singular point. And in the next measurable amount of time, the universe was 100 million trillion degrees Celsius. And heat has a color that you can't see in the form of infrared light, but I can feel that color. And if we had an infrared camera, you would see that the potatoes are glowing with white hot light right now. And the microwaves that cook them are the same thing you observe when you look into space and see the cosmic microwave background. It's the echoes of that first frantic burst, moving forever, ringing through space and time. Joseph Albers wrote the Bible on color theory, and he defined the three characteristics of color, which are hue, saturation, and brightness. And if you use those three characteristics with subtractive color mixing, all of the colors together make black. None of the light is reflected back. All of the colors are absorbed. And Joseph Albers said, "We are able to hear a single musical note, but we are never able to see a single color unconnected to other colors. Colors present themselves in a continuous flux, constantly related to changing neighbors and changing conditions. And as a consequence, the reading of color demands what Kandinsky often demanded for the reading of art. And Kandinsky said, that which matters is not the what, but the how." was talking to my friend Ivar. Maybe some of you know him. Ivar Heckscher.
Yeah, you should not say that I taught you, because this is not what happens. What happens is that our common interest creates conversations when we meet, and between us, knowledge arises from we don't know where. Because many things that I have said in our conversations came to me when we talked. It was not some kind of prepared stuff, but it is kind of our time's most precious thing, that we can talk with each other and truths and interesting things come up. Colors is what it is about, because the content of a picture is nowadays not the issue. The issue is the experience you have of the colors in a picture. And it's a sad thing to watch people in museums looking for what does this mean? What is the meaning of that? Because the meaning of a picture is of secondary interest. The experience out of the colors of a picture or the forms in the picture is what it is interesting. Since you were 5 years old, you have experienced the difference of clubs, balls, and rings. And you definitely know what to do with balls as you do not do with rings, etc., etc. And you can also see, or anyone can see, that even if there are no conscious intentions in the juggling with these colors or that colors, of course, they have an impact on you. And what you have to find out is that this impact becomes more and more conscious, that you can really do what the rings want you to do, or the balls. And no hurry, no worry. Because in art you can't be hasty. You have to give everything its time. And if you don't do that, then you will invent ways, and intellect will come in where intellect has nothing to do. Art has got nothing to do with intellect. Intellect and thinking is about science. Art is about heart. So take it easy. As with this color thing that we have now said recently 150 times, use or abuse, be used or use. It goes also with the objects. It goes also with friendship. It goes with everything in the world, that you can have a dialogue relation to objects, humans, time even, and have a conversation rather than must. Take away the musts and bring in the curiosity of a dialogue with your objects, and now with your colored objects, and now with the room that you have to do it in. And I have always had this, because I met this Kandinsky thing we have lived hundreds of years with the use of the objects and the colors, and we have now to start be used by the objects and the colors. And this was long before I met you. Necessity for the world, of course, is you can't object to that expression. Already when you talk about the necessity of the audience, necessities of the audience, then one has to be very careful, because the artist has to comply that this is the audience. But if he serves what the audience wants in a shallow way, then he's far away, then he's out, kind of. And where the real necessities are, well, the necessities of colors so far is still we have to learn to know them.
And I told him I was making a show about juggling and color. And he said a really great thing about how painters work with color. He told me, in the old days, painters such as Michelangelo, and even up to Rembrandt to be exact, they used colors to say something, but they used them. The colors were going to be slaved into the minds and the hands of the painting artists. But then comes along Kandinsky and his gang. They turned the whole thing backwards and asked, how can I serve you blue or red? Or what do you want to say, yellow? And how can I be a mediator of what yellow wants to say? A sunset is just a coincidence of celestial events. Out of all of the spinning and the meaningless chaos of the universe, we get what we call a sunset. It's the dance of the earth going around the sun. And from our perspective, from where we are standing, we call it a sunset, but actually it's an eclipse. It's the earth we're standing on which covers the sun. Imagine a tiny creature standing on the green ball. It's a simple idea, but when I start to juggle, you can also imagine that for the tiny creature, the red ball will rise and set over and over, again and again with every throw and catch. And weeks, months, and years of time are passing for the tiny creature with every new pattern. And it's the same thing for us. Orbits mark the passing of time for the Earth and everything else in the galaxy. All these eclipses are either a sunrise or a sunset. It depends on your position on the ball and how it's rotating in relation to the other planets. All of these factors aligned yesterday when the sun set at 4:57 p.m., but we didn't really notice everything that was happening. It's way too much to think about. But the universe keeps moving whether we are aware of it or not. The sun set once again today, and it will set again tomorrow.
In the first light, past the Noah cloud, bodies wrapped in white. Stranded every pain, baby past the sun. I got out of brain. In him, sand it starts to steal, dirt and ice and bed and cheese in the potter's field. Strangers scattering, never passage in the wind of penitence.
water and air don't have the same refractive index. When light hits water, it'll pass through at a different angle. The water bends the light a little bit. And because light always wants to move as fast as possible, that means the light has to know how the water is going to bend it before it even starts its journey. And that's something that we as humans can't do, because we have a linear perception of time. But things moving at the speed of light don't have that problem. Nothing is faster than the speed of light. In fact, time will slow down before light can speed up. And when time slows down, light becomes more red. And when time speeds up, light becomes more blue. And if time speeds up so much, then light becomes so blue that it turns into being ultraviolet, which is a color that we can't see. And it's impossible to imagine a color which you've never seen before. Sorry, you picked a blue card. Did anybody else pick blue? Can I borrow your card? Thanks. Blue, that's my favorite color. Sunsets on Mars are blue. And if you look at your card, those colors represent the colors of sunsets on other planets in the Milky Way. And sunsets on Mars are blue because at dusk, all of the dust in the Martian atmosphere filters out everything except for the blue frequencies. And all the other planets also have different chemical compositions in their skies, which turns the sunset a different color, the colors which you're holding. They're all another type of sunset. And I picked the title for the show, Another Sunset, because I was imagining what the juggling might look like. And then I realized that when you watch like a sunset, that's a moment in time when you really care about colors, because you start to see it goes, you know, from red to pinks and the blue, the dark, deep, dark purples and everything. And it also takes a long time, and it draws you in, and you know it's going to take a long time, and you let yourself care about color in that moment. So I thought, but sunset, that's a good hint. If the title of the show was something about a sunset, it's a good kind of suggestion to the audience of how they might experience the show. Because if you're going to come to this show that I'm doing, I mean, you saw it yesterday. And if you're going to come to this show thinking like, oh, I'm going to see a bunch of cool tricks that's going to impress me, you kind of miss the bigger point of the show, right? Like you kind of have to get in, even if you're not into juggling and you don't know juggling, you kind of have to start to care that the ring is blue or red. Even if you've never seen it before, you can kind of get into a mental state of like, okay, I'm going to watch this with some sort of different expectation than how high is it going to be thrown, or oh, is it 10 rings now, or right? That's not the point. The point is like, what if they're different colors, and what could that even mean, and what could that even do? And so I thought, okay, another type of sunset. It's another sunset. It's another type of like this process of giving yourself up to color and caring about it in the moment. A sunset takes time to develop, and when you watch a sunset, you give yourself up to it. You go deep into the moment, and you don't expect it to change into something else all of a sudden. You get into the game of picking out all the tiny details, and that's how I feel when I'm juggling with all these colors, but I don't really know how all of it works because this is the first time I've gotten to explore these things. Even though juggling can be a visual art form, color has never truly been the first priority when creating juggling. I mean, we did our best, right? We made all the tricks, we just didn't figure out what color they should be. And I always think about it as if a painter was going to make a picture of the ocean and the sky using one color blue. You'd end up with just a big blue square. There'd be no horizon. The water and the sky would be the same color. And that's kind of how I felt as a juggling artist. I mean, the painter would just go out and buy some different paints of different shades of blue and make the picture properly. So for this show, I made the ball wave. And this is fabric that's been hand-dyed by a costume designer who works for Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas. And then the other balls that I have on the ball wave, I gave a set of rings to a woman who's a costume designer for Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas, and I said, dye fabric that matches every color of every ring. So she made me a bunch of fabric that just matches every ring. And then I sent the fabric to Doug Sayer's mom in Iowa, her name's Cheryl, and she sewed them into 108 beanbags. I covered balls filled with sand from Iceland in different colored balloons. And these are Qualitex brand balloons. It's the best brand of balloon, right? You know that. And then in terms of the balls in the show, I am using some balls covered in balloons. That was one of my first solutions to figure out how to make balls of different colors, because you can buy balloons in many different colors, and then you can just stretch them over a ball, and hey, they're the balls that color. Of course, there's a million drawbacks. They don't make the balloons in all the colors that I have in the rings, and the balloons break all the time, and you have to replace them constantly, and it's a different texture, different feel, and sometimes they kind of come off, and they kind of warp, and they wrinkle, and yeah, they don't feel good, but hey, it makes some different colors. That was an easier, more economical solution. So Qualitex balloons, they actually make 135 colors. So I got every single color of every balloon they make and just put them on a ball and said, this one, you know, that was a process I could manage at home. And a guy named Dario in Argentina made me a custom set of totally black juggling clubs. They're pretty nice. And you'll notice when you see the show, I have rings and I have balls, but I don't have clubs. The clubs in the show are all black. I don't have the clubs in the colors, and it's because it was impossible. I couldn't do it. I failed. I tried so hard to get clubs made in the same colors. I really wanted the rings, the balls, and the clubs, and everything in these different shades of the red, green, and blue, and it was just literally impossible. I guess in theory, I could open my own plastics factory and manufacture my own clubs, which is kind of, I guess, the next step if I want to pursue it, to start manufacturing on my own. But again, that's a whole other pursuit, right? I mean, manufacturing things out of plastic is like a whole other, it's not juggling, clearly, even though it's making things for juggling. So, and even to get the black clubs I use in the show was not straightforward. It took me about 2 years to get clubs that are totally black. Like you can get clubs that maybe have a black body and a white handle, or all black, but the rubber ends are white. And it's just silly things like this. Silly in terms of thinking of juggling as an art form, of being an artist who wants to use like the set of tools are intentionally made for some sort of artistic expression. Because sure, it's the normal club you have is white with a black end and a black end and a black middle part where the handle and the body meet. And then somebody said, oh, it would be so cool to have the reverse of that as like a play on the traditional stereotypical club. So they make clubs that's like black and black, but then white, white, white. And so to actually get all black clubs wasn't straightforward. I mean, it wasn't crazy hard as the rings, but it still wasn't like I could just go buy some black clubs. Which also makes sense. I mean, a lot of performers perform with a black background, and of course we have this culture of juggling and performing where it's like you want everything white so it pops in the theater. But hey, I'm an artist. I want to use some black clubs. It's not. It wasn't just straightforward. And after 8 years of bugging him, Daniel Schumacher from Mr. Babash in Switzerland made me rings in 3 different sizes in 3 colors of 6 shades each. So I was just so naive in many ways when I started the project. I thought, well, I'll just go get some different rings made in different colors. That's it. So I started to talk to the people who make the rings in the factories in Germany and in Switzerland. And I thought it would be a case of, well, I'll just pay you some money and you'll make me some different colored rings. And like, we'll call it a day. Like, thanks for your help. And that's just not the case at all. I discovered the politics, the culture, the rhythm of how things are made and how they're bought and sold, and just weird stuff. Like I went to some people who own a factory in Germany who make juggling equipment. And I said, hey, can you make me some different colored juggling clubs? And they said, well, no, because it's too much hassle and the logistics don't work out and our factory makes it like this. And I said, yeah, but I'll pay you. What's your price? And they said, well, money doesn't really matter because we're already making like 3 million euros a year in profits or in whatever revenue, I don't know. We already have, 15 employees. It's the top level of our tax bracket. So if I hire more employees, if I sell more juggling clubs, I have to go up a whole level of my infrastructure, my company, my administration. I pay more tax, more lawyers, more whatever, right? And they're just like, yeah, so we're happy doing what we're doing. We sell these colors. That's the colors people buy. We're not, there's no price you can pay us to make us change this system that we're in. We've been doing this for 30 years and like we're comfortable here. And then it's like you can't really, I don't say fight against that because you don't want to fight, but you can't work with that. I mean, there's no amount of money that's going to make these people change their entire lives of the infrastructure of their company, so I get a different color ring or a different colored ball or whatever. And there is some sort of perception from all the manufacturers that I approached where they said, you want to have these rings in different colors or clubs in different shades of blue, green, whatever. People will not buy them. People are not interested in those colors. You're the only one interested in those colors. And we can debate that or not. I don't know if that's really relevant. But what it does occur to me that's maybe interesting to mention is that now we get into the scale and the size of juggling as a subculture. So there is, X amount of jugglers in the world. Imagine multiplying that number and adding a 0 or 2 on the end. Let's say there's 5,000 jugglers in the world, which is it's very small. It's a inaccurately small number. But let's say we add a 0 on there. Now there's 50,000 jugglers. Now there's 500,000 jugglers. Now there's 5 million jugglers. Maybe if there was 5 million jugglers in the world, there would be enough people like me who are interested to have that color of blue, right? So there's something about the scale of the juggling world, which I found out pretty quickly about when I started this journey, that didn't occur to me beforehand, where I'm like, oh yeah, I want some different color blue. And it's just like, well, we don't have enough critical mass. There's not enough other people who also want that color blue. We can't manufacture it. We can't make a living. We can't make money. We're not interested. We're already doing our thing. So it was just a struggle for 12, 13, 15 years now to make this show. And so just to finish out the color story of all the objects I'm using, yeah, so it was like the first idea was with the rings. And one little thing to say that's kind of funny is, so I have this TED Talk on YouTube where I talk about the juggling ring, like kind of evolution of how rings changed and were developed. And I realized during that TED Talk that I've spent, whatever I say in the video, I don't remember, but 25,000 hours or 20,000 hours with this ring in my hand, which was a very conservative estimate I made for that talk. But I grew up, I started juggling when I was 8 years old. I'm 46 years old now. And I've been juggling that ring my whole life. I never thought about it when I started off, but I mean, I've had that ring in my hand for all these years. And so I'm very familiar with the texture and the way that the edge of it curves and the weight, right, and everything about it. And so I kept saying to the guy making this ring, I said, I want it in a different color plastic. And he kept telling me for years, he said, oh, but just go spray paint it, just spray paint it. You can spray paint it any color you want. And I said, no, I do actual tricks that are very delicate, that have taken years to figure out with my touch of how you throw it and how you catch it, that if there's paint on that plastic, it seems trivial, it seems stupid, but like it actually matters. That you can't have that. I didn't spend my whole life with spray painted rings. And so he kept telling me this year after year. So finally I got very frustrated and I took some rings and I spray painted them beautifully, different shades of blue, 9 different colors of blue. And it's such a beautiful photo. I can show it to you and it just looks perfect. And then, of course, as soon as you put them in your hands, they kind of stick together and they rub the wrong way and they and they don't release correctly, and then they get flakes of paint and it cracks, and when it drops, the thing breaks, flakes off, and it's just sticky everywhere, and it's just it doesn't work. And so I took those rings to this guy after 5 years, and I said, look, like, it's a disaster. This is totally stupid. You have to make me in the actual colored plastic, like put different colors into the plastic so I get a real plastic that I've spent 20,000 hours touching and not this spray paint stuff. Because the type of plastic that the ring is made out of, you can't paint it really. It's a long story. And I'm actually really sad that I know that. I don't want to know how to paint plastic. I don't want to know what type of plastic the ring is, because I want to juggle. I want to be an artist who uses the tool. I want to spend my time figuring out how to use it instead of having to figure out how it's made. And this is 30 juggling patterns using 140 rings. And like all of the other juggling in the show, I've specifically arranged each color of each ring in every trick and put them in an order which feels right to me. Much in the same way, when you chose your favorite color, it felt right to you. So let's try this and see what happens. I call this the ring cycle. So it's been a real process to acquire all these objects in the show, and it's been very educational about the whole idea of juggling culture and politics and how things are made, which I never thought about before. And that's kind of on the practical side. And then on the artistic side, I was pretty naive when I started the project. Like I said, it was just Wes saying, hey, let's get some different colored rings in here. Oh, cool, I'm gonna do that. And then I suffered through the whole process of, and it also wasn't cheap, just to say, like the objects that are in the show, I mean, it's a significant chunk of money over these 15 years. You might be surprised if I would name the price, but it's a lot of money in that room over there. And but I thought once I got through that process, I'd be good to go. I got the rings; they look really, really cool. And so then the thing is, I finally got everything in one room. I had the rings, I had the balls, I had the black clubs. Okay, this is like 3 or 4 years ago. Now we're going to start to work. And I talked to Ivar Heckscher, and the first thing he said was, well, yeah, you have these rings, and it looks amazing, but we're in a room right now where we were at the circus school. He was a director of the circus school here in Stockholm. And he said, well, this room has slightly gray walls, and this red, it looks a little bit pink compared to the background, so you should really get a wall that's a little bit darker gray behind you. And I thought, okay, yeah, I guess I can, how do I do that? And he said, yeah, actually the ceiling would be good if you could change the color of the ceiling, and of course the walls, you should change the colors of the walls in the show. It'd be good if the walls were white and then black and maybe dark gray. And the floor, of course, you need the floor to change color. And then I started to realize, what have I gotten myself into here? And he's totally right, because it turns out that colors are just relative to each other. I mean, a green ring can look black in a certain situation, or red, or whatever. It can look invisible, depending on the lighting and the colors around it. So, of course, Ivar was right. I should have a completely controlled environment in which to make this performance. I started to do that. I started to buy a bunch of theater lights. Those are not cheap. If you ever want to get into lighting, that's not a cheap hobby to have. So we were buying a bunch of lights, me and Ivar, and we were doing lighting tests and stuff for this color show. And after a while I realized, because I was also interviewing other people besides Ivar, other jugglers, because it was such a big project in my life, I really wanted to know what other jugglers thought about different colors and different colored juggling. And I would always ask people and say, hey, if you're going to go see a show about juggling and color, what do you expect you're going to see? And so many jugglers, there's this juggler brain, I call it, where if you ask a juggler to do something, they kind of immediately want to go to the most obscure, convoluted, difficult edge case of that concept. Of hey, we're going to do this show with this thing, and then they immediately trying to think how to break the concept, or how to take it to the extreme, right? And every single person was like, oh yeah, you could juggle red rings and put a green light on it, and they could be black, and then if you throw them up and there's a red background, they disappear, and then you turn the light on and off and it flashes red, and I was like, okay, yeah, these are not bad ideas, but it turns out that most of these ideas involve lighting design. So I started working on that version of the show with this controlled environment from Ivar and these lighting effects from all these other jugglers who have these fantasies. Because it's true, you can make the rings disappear or different colors in different ways. And after a while I realized I'm just doing a lighting design show. I'm just a lighting technician now. And really it just kind of turns into you just need a person who's good at programming lights, and you're going to have a show that's just light design show. Which is not bad, but it wasn't what I had kind of set out to do as a first step. I feel like nobody has really worked formally with color and juggling, so we don't even know what we're doing on a fundamental level, instead of trying to jump ahead and do these edge cases of crazy things disappearing and reappearing and changing colors and everything else. So for this show it was okay, we're not going to have any control over the background, we're not going to have any control over the lights, we're just going to take the first small steps forward. What happens if you juggle with different patterns and these different colors that I chose that I edited to show an audience? What happens then? Does anything happen? just pass the tray along. Put your card on the tray. We'll collect them. I was wondering how to end the show. I wanted everything to build to some sort of conclusion. I thought I should collect all the cards, and maybe that action could be the key to how the show ends. And then I remembered Kanye West went to CES in Las Vegas in 2019. And I remembered a video I saw of Kanye 4 years ago playing with a ring that turns color into sound. And so I went on the internet. And here it is. It's called Spectrum. It's by this company Sphero, and it's $49.95 plus free shipping from Amazon for 2 of them. So yeah, I have one. This ring it's a toy that connects to your phone, hopefully. And once it's connected to your phone, wait, connecting, connect. Connect, scanning, it's scanning. Connect. Once it's connected to your phone, it's connected. It scans the wavelength on the card and turns that frequency into the correct musical note. So I thought we could try and hear what some of your favorite colors sound like. So here we have a blue, red, yellow, oh, purple, orange, red, green, yeah. Green, orange, what, yellow, blue, gray, potato, the light, me, you. What card did you have? This one? This one, okay, let's hear that again. The blue one? Great. Sit down, thanks for your help. This was your card. Did anybody else pick a similar color? You did? You like this color? Yeah. So you both like this color. Look, at first, this card was your favorite color. Then it was a unique frequency of light. And next, it was the color of a sunset on another planet. Now it's a musical note. And it's all those things at the same time, depending on how you look at it. Your point of view will define what it is in the moment, exactly like a rainbow. A rainbow contains all the colors, but it's not really there, and yet you can experience it because it's you being in a particular spot that makes the rainbow appear. In the exact same way that it's actually you that makes the sunset happen. Where you are makes it a sunset. You are creating the sunset yourself. And I can't tell you what all these things mean, just as I can't tell you what you experience when I throw the blue ring or the pink ring. But what I can say is that where we are and how we look at things has a significant effect on the world around us. And I really appreciate you spending your time here, now, with me.
sad
Thanks
come
Thanks for
on.
being here. Yeah, thanks for coming down. Great to meet you. Really appreciate it. See you, Eric.
We finally cried.
He's in Paris. Thanks, Olle.
Oh, and
Thanks for
we got it.
Great. Thanks, sir.
We cause right.
Now that I've kind of seen this side of juggling, I don't think I can unsee it. Like, I can't not think about this now. And one kind of fun behind the scenes thing to say, I had some different text about this in the show and kind of cut it out to focus on color, but we can talk about it now, which is that it's not just about what color should the object be, but also, I'm sure, what size should it be? We already talked about technically what size it could be, but what texture, what material, what center of gravity, what, is it matte finish, is it shiny, is it matte? And also, what material is it? Is it wood, glass, metal? Is it copper or bronze? Is it gold? Is it silver or whatever, right? And so this is the second kind of part of juggling where, again, I had this story in the show and I cut it out of the show for time, tried to make the show really focused on color, but I was talking, this is like a really big deal in my life, this story now, in terms of this show, which is 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was talking to a journalist from London in an interview, and he was interviewing me, and he was kind of leading the answer with the question, like when journalists are like, so you think that juggling is really cool, right? You know, you're like, well, okay, thanks for the question that leads the answer. And he said, yeah, but Jay, you're talking all about the objects and the patterns and the juggling, but it's really juggling is there that the performer is the star of the show, right? Like the performer is the most important thing, the personality or the character of the performer. And I was just immediately like, no, the object in juggling is the most important thing, because without the object, I'm an actor, I'm a dancer, which is not a bad thing. But if I want to be a juggler, then clearly the object has to be there. And therefore the object is the important thing in juggling. And he didn't quite maybe buy my, my argument in the moment, but I had a little light bulb go off in my head where I was like, and this is like 3 years ago, so I've been juggling a while, you know, until then. And I thought, oh man, as an artist at least, I've completely missed half of my process. Because the game with juggling now is you go into a room and you take 3 balls, and by the way, we all have the same equipment. It all comes from the same 3 factories in Germany and Netherlands and whatever, Switzerland, whatever, right? And so we all have the same objects to juggle with, but I try to do some trick or pattern or shape that you don't do. And you try to do one that I don't do. And that's the game I grew up with. And it's super fun. Like, hey, man, I can take 3 balls and go like this, and you can't. And then you say, oh, yeah, but I can take 3 balls and go like this, and you can't do that. And I go, oh, cool trick. And we kind of inspire each other back and forth. But then I realized that when you go into the room with the normal game of juggling nowadays, you make up that new pattern, and then you go, cool, I had such a great day. I made this really cool new trick. I'm going to go home, and I'm done. And then about talking to this guy on the phone from London, I was like, oh no, if you make that new trick, you're only halfway done. Because what you should do is you should take that new trick and then you go, oh, you know what? I made this new trick using 3 balls that are white. What if the balls were yellow? And then you film that and you go, oh, that trick looks even better. And you go, what if one ball was purple and one was blue and one was yellow? And then you film it again and go, nah, that looked worse. And then you can just keep going down that path and say, what if one ball is a stick made of wood that's this long, and the 2 balls are, you know, yellow and green, and then you try the trick again, right? Like you follow the process to the end. Instead of stopping it halfway with the technique, you actually start to care about the object for real. And that was like such a heavy moment in my life now. I mean, you know, this whole time I thought, like, yeah, I'm doing the juggling thing. And 3 years ago I realized, like, I'm halfway doing the juggling thing.
Yeah, and you know, there is a lot about juggling that we don't know yet. There is a lot about juggling. It's a young art form, never forget. It's a young art form. Architecture is an old art form. You are in a different position. You are allowed to be childish and curious and unconscious and stupid even. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. There is so much to come yet, I guess.
First, this card was your favorite color. Then it was a unique frequency of light. And next, it was the color of a sunset on another planet. Now it's a musical note, and it's all those things at the same time, depending on how you look at it. Your point of view will define what it is in the moment, exactly like a rainbow. A rainbow contains all the colors, but it's not really there, and yet you can experience it, because it's you being in a particular spot that makes the rainbow appear. In the exact same way that it's actually you that makes the sunset happen. Where you are makes it a sunset. You are creating the sunset yourself. And I can't tell you what all these things mean, just as I can't tell you what you experience when I throw a pink ring or then a blue ring. But what I can say is that where we are and how we look at things has a significant effect on the world around us. And I really appreciate you spending your time here, now, with me. And that's a wrap. Okay.
Wow,
That was all the shit.
that was so fast.
Cool. So should we do some photos and
Yeah.
then we'll do the video?